Welcome to Oregon Indie Film, a video podcast that shines the light on Oregon's independent film industry. I'm your host, Dawn Sellers. I interview Oregon's independent filmmakers who offer insights into the creative process, challenges, and triumphs of making movies in Oregon. This episode features tenured professor Dustin Morrow with Portland State's film program, also a writer, director, editor, and podcaster. Dustin was instrumental in developing the film program as the largest in the Pacific Northwest. We talk about the growth of Portland State's film program over the last decade and how important this program is to the ecosystem of Oregon independent film. You'll also hear about how his love of film developed in a small town in Illinois, leading him to Portland via Iowa, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia. His enthusiasm for 1980s film inspired a podcast, and his knowledge of genre films inspires his film students. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Dustin Morrow. All right. Well, I am here today with Dustin Morrow, director, producer, writer, editor, festival coordinator. But most importantly, we're here to talk about his activities as a tenured professor in the School of Film at Portland State University. So I'm honored to have you here on the podcast today. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Don. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I think, my goal with this podcast is kind of branding Oregon as the indie film capital of the world. Mm-hmm. And Portland State is a big part of that. So I'm excited to talk about that. But first, just start off by telling us about yourself, who you are and what you do and how you got to Portland State.
Yeah, sure. I went to film school at Iowa and then moved to Los Angeles and worked for a number of years, primarily as a film editor, working on mostly short form material. So a lot of like movie trailers and music videos, documentary TV series, narrative TV series, some like sort of internal corporate video for the studios, things like that. And really found myself missing academia and scholarship and the environment of a big university, which I really fell in love with when I was an undergrad. And so I decided to move back into that realm and went back to Iowa actually in a different program and got my MFA there. And from there went to Temple University in Philadelphia, where I taught for 7 years before coming to Portland State to start their production program. When I arrived at Portland State in 2011, there was only one other full-time faculty member in film, and he was a film studies and film history scholar. And so they hired me to come in and kind of start up the production program. And all these years later, we are, I think we're the largest film program in the American Pacific Northwest in terms of enrollment and number of faculty dedicated exclusively to film and resources that we allocate to our film program. For a number of years, I know we were the fastest growing major on the campus for a bunch of years there when we first started. So it just showed that there was kind of an unmet demand in Portland and in the Pacific Northwest for a program like this at a big 4-year university. There were academic programs at places like the Seattle Film Center and the Northwest Film Center, which is now PAMCUT here in Portland. But there weren't a lot of options for students who wanted to pursue film as a career, who also wanted to stay in the Pacific Northwest. Or come to the Pacific Northwest to do their education. So I think that's why we blew up so quickly. And now we have 10 full-time faculty and a number of really wonderful professionals from the industry who work with us as adjunct instructors on individual courses in disciplines that the full-time faculty aren't really trained to teach in.
Yeah, wow, congratulations. That's an amazing thing to build in such a short amount of time. I mean,
Yeah.
really, what about 14 years? You've built it from one person to what it is today.
Yeah.
I feel like the program, the film program at Portland State is really an important part of this ecosystem that has developed in Oregon for independent film. I know a lot of the students probably come to the program and move on to, LA or New
Hmm.
York or wherever. But so many also stay here because they love Portland and they discover that there is this film industry here. So, what is your experience with that?
Yeah, you had one of our students on your podcast recently,
Yeah, yeah.
Janine. Yeah, it's really great, and it took a few years as we started to turn out graduates before we started to really see this kind of network of PSU film graduates working regularly in the Portland film industry and hiring each other and looking out for each other. And we call it our little like PSU film mafia. We
Oh,
have
I love
this,
that.
yeah, we have this great
Yeah.
sort of cohort of graduates that kind of move around in Portland
Hmm.
together,
Hmm.
making work. I was at the Portland Panorama, that fabulous new festival that was done at
Yeah.
the Hollywood Theater. And I had a film in that, and I went up on the stage at the screening afterwards to do the Q&A, and I looked to my left and my right at the other filmmakers who were on the stage with me, and I was like, wow, fully half of these people are graduates of our program, which is just an awesome thing to see.
Yeah.
And
What a
so
great feeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we do things all the time. Like we'll bring in our graduates to speak to our current students to tell them sort of here's how you can build and navigate a career in Portland in film. Once upon a time, as you just mentioned, there was an expectation if you wanted to work in film that you would have to move to someplace like Los Angeles
Hmm.
or New York City. And that's not really the case anymore.
Mm-mm.
You do have to be a little more malleable and a little more, there are more demands, I think, on someone who wants to stay in Portland and build a healthy career just working in the film industry. But it can be done, and our graduates are proving that, and we're really proud of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the financial support is a little more difficult in Oregon, um, or it has been. But I think if filmmakers can learn to navigate that and raise money to make films, this mafia that you guys have created, working together and kind of, building this network where you can help each other and then you don't really need that financial support. But I think, having film as a full-time paid career is a little more difficult in Portland for sure. But people do it. They do it all the time.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And
yeah.
going to our program really gives these students a leg up because they have the opportunity to network with each other while they're
Hmm.
studying in the degree, and as they move out into the professional community in Portland, they maintain and nurture those relationships, and it results in employment. We have one of our students was a production coordinator on Kelly Reichert's last movie when she came here
Hmm.
and shot, and he just wrote me an email and he said, "I need production assistants. Who do you got for me?" And I get emails like that all the time, and I know other faculty do
Hmm.
too. And
Hmm.
it's a way for us to build that network beyond the bounds of the campus and the school itself out into the community.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think you guys do a great job of that. I mean, I've met many Portland State film students and graduates who've come to Portland, and developed their own network, and now they're out making these films, because of the network that they've created there.
Mm-hmm.
They've been able to create there. But not all the graduates stay at Oregon. Some, move on and become famous. Are there any that you can think of off the top of your head that have gone through the program that are now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how
out there.
famous they are, but
Yeah.
there's certainly we have a number of graduates who've gone on to LA and to other cities and found success working in television and filmmaking, either independent film or Hollywood-based film. We also have a lot of students because we have a really robust film studies and film history program
Mhm.
who've gone on to graduate school at some of the best universities in the country and even
Mhm.
internationally for that matter. So, like pursuing PhDs or master's programs to further their study in film, which is really cool to see too. Because
Mhm.
we don't have a post. We only offer a BA and a BS. So
Right.
students that want to do a master's or a PhD have to move on to another school. But that's not a bad
Mhm.
thing. I think that people shouldn't do it like I do it, where they got both degrees from the same school. I think it's good to
Right.
diversify your educational experience and go to different
Yeah.
schools. But we're really proud of the students who've moved on and done advanced degrees too.
Uh-huh. Have any of the students come back to teach at the
Hmm.
program? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
for sure.
That's
And one
cool.
of our graduates just was hired as a permanent tenure track. Actually, it wasn't just, it was a couple of years ago. Um, a professor in the Native American Center at Portland State, and she teaches courses looking at like indigenous genre cinema, like indigenous horror films, which is really cool because I can remember having her in. I taught a couple classes on horror films at PSU, and I remember having her in those classes. And so when I found out she was back at Portland State full time, working as a professor, I was like, oh, that's so cool. It's so cool to see her evolution as a scholar and see where that has led her.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great. Um, and so for you personally, was there like a time, I mean, you went to film school, but before that, when you realized you wanted to be in the film industry, was there a light bulb moment or a film that you saw and you're like, that's what I want to do? Or did you always want to be a filmmaker?
Yeah, it wasn't one individual moment, but I'll tell you what it was. It was when I was really little kid, when I was like 8, maybe 9, my dad brought home a VCR, and it was at a time where not every household had a VCR. It was sort of early in the
Hmm.
days of the VCR. And I started taping movies off of TV and watching them over and over and over again and rewinding and pausing. And before I even knew really that there was a craft and an art to making films, I started to realize through that process that there was somebody behind the camera. It wasn't just the
Hmm.
people on the screen, that someone had to be making this, and there had to be decisions being made about where to place the camera, when to cut to another shot, and even sort of what the actors should be wearing, what kind of sound I should be hearing, um, the art direction. I just started to sort of intuit this stuff. And then I got a little older and started to read about filmmaking as an art form, and that's when I really committed to it. And so I knew by the time I was probably, I would say around 12 or 13, that I really never went through that process that most young people go through where they don't know what to do with their lives,
Hmm. Yeah.
what to do when they grow up. Because I always just kind of knew that it was going to be film. I didn't realize I was going to be a professor, and I didn't figure that out until I went to college as an undergrad. And I was like, I love it here. I love the university. I love the academy. I love talking to people in other disciplines. I love working with people in other walks of scholarship and creative endeavor and
Hmm.
the collaboration. And
Hmm.
that was something that I did not find in LA, where everybody was. I didn't find a lot of interest in narrative or in aesthetics or in sort of thematics in things that I like to talk about when it comes to filmmaking. It was a lot of discussion of box office and technology, and those things I
Hmm.
find less interesting. And so
Hmm.
my home is really, even though I still make films and even though I still occasionally work in Hollywood, um, my home is really in the university. That's the kinds of movies that I like to make are not necessarily going to be monster box office
Right.
blockbusters. They're a little more personal. They're a little edgier. They're a little more challenging to their audience. And so I've really been afforded an incredible gift by my profession. I love teaching, but I also love making movies. And it's great that I've found a job that allows me to do both of those things.
Yeah, you really do have kind of the best of both worlds because
Yeah.
you're teaching young filmmakers to continue on their path, but then you're in Portland where independent film is really, blossoming. And I get that. Like, film is, you want to send a message. You want to have something to say when you make an independent film, and you're not tied to those numbers or those box office records. You get to make this film, and I believe we can change the world with film, with stories, and with film.
Yeah.
And so I think independent film is so important.
I grew up in a small town in downstate rural Illinois, a town of 1,000 people. There were 40 kids in my graduating class in high school.
Wow.
So a real bubble. And this was like the 80s and 90s when I was a kid. And so there was no internet. I wasn't getting the New York Times on my doorstep in my small town every day. And my window into a larger world was through film. It was through the video store and the movie theater. And that's really how I learned about other people and other cultures. Roger Ebert once said that film is like an empathy machine, that there's no other art form quite like it. Not music, not literature, not the fine arts. There's nothing quite like film for granting you the opportunity to walk in someone else's shoes. And that's realizing that I didn't get that at the time, but realizing that later, that like so much of my idea of what the world is came from falling in love with movies when I was young, informed my desire to make them when I got older and to share my own stories and my own point of view. And that's really why I did it, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Wow, a town of 1,000 people. That's really small.
Yeah.
That was in Illinois, right? You grew up
In the middle of a cornfield in Western Illinois. Yeah.
But you had a VCR. That's kind of amazing.
We had one mom and pop video store in my town. And then my dad, who was a pharmacist, his drugstore actually rented videos too. And so I had access to, it wasn't a ton. It wasn't like a Blockbuster where there were just aisles and aisles of stuff. But there was enough there that that it really, I found my filmmakers, I found my people, I found Martin Scorsese, I found Alfred Hitchcock, I found Howard Hawks, I found, all these filmmakers that I love, Billy Wilder, and just went through all of their movies and watched them endlessly and memorized them basically. And when you know something that well, then you can really start to look at it and look under the hood and start to figure out how it works and start to fall in love with not just the film, but with the process of how it was made. So.
Yeah, and you've named off a lot of filmmakers, and that was one of my questions. Like, I know that you're probably very inspiring to your students because you've worked in film and you've done a lot. But do you have someone that's inspired you? Did you have a mentor as you were, forging your path in filmmaking, or someone that you looked up to that kind of helped you along?
Not a mentor so much as filmmakers whose works I fell in love with, and Krzysztof Kieslowski is, Martin Scorsese, Hitchcock who is my favorite filmmaker of all time.
Yeah.
Michael Mann. I'm a great lover of genre cinema. I got to study with a world-renowned scholar named Rick Altman at the University of Iowa, who is a kind of a legendary scholar of genre. And I really fell in love with genre working with him. So I wouldn't necessarily call him a mentor, but I worked a lot with him on genre. And that's where I fell in love with genre cinema as a concept, like how to subvert it and how to sort of like follow the rules, but step outside the rules enough to make something that's interesting and even revolutionary. So I teach a lot of, in addition to teaching production courses at Portland State, when they give me opportunities to teach film studies courses, which they do on occasion, I'll always do something that has to do with genre cinema. So either like a John Carpenter class or a Michael Mann class, or I'm doing one on John Hughes this year, which is going to be fun. So we're going to be looking at the evolution of teen cinema from the dawn of filmmaking, from the earliest teen movies up until really what's coming out today, and John Hughes's important role in changing that in the 80s.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Hitchcock movie?
Stay right there. We'll be back after a short break to hear more from Dustin Morrow. Are you passionate about supporting independent filmmakers and local storytelling? Become a sponsor of the Oregon Indie Film Podcast, where we shine a spotlight on Oregon's thriving independent film community. Our listeners are filmmakers, film lovers, and creative professionals eager to discover local talent and stories. As a sponsor, your brand will reach an engaged, creative audience that values community and authentic storytelling. Join us in celebrating Oregon's indie film scene. Let's bring your brand into the spotlight. Ready to partner? Let's talk.
Calling all filmmakers, performers, and creatives. The Soundstage is your home for high-quality recording in the Portland area. Whether you're working on an audio or video podcast, voiceover project, audiobook, casting your next film, or need help with that self-tape audition, we offer a professional, welcoming studio space. Come record with confidence and mention the Oregon Indie Film Podcast to get $5 off your next session. Learn more about The Soundstage, the Northwest's premier voiceover and recording studio, at thesoundstagenw.com.
Hey there. If you're enjoying this episode of Oregon Indie Film, don't go anywhere. We've got more great conversation coming up. And if you believe in uplifting local voices and the power of independent storytelling, we'd love your support. Hit that follow button, share the show with a friend, or leave us a quick 5-star review. It makes a big difference. Want to get more involved? Reach out at OregonIndieFilm@gmail.com. Now, back to the episode.
I do. It is Rear Window.
Okay.
I think it's the best movie ever made. I think I really do.
Tell us about that. What makes you think that?
It is a movie about, I think it functions perfectly well as a thriller. I think it's the most efficient, thrilling thriller that I've ever seen. And if that was all it was, then that would be enough for me. But it also is an incredible meditation on the act of movie-going itself, and this idea of movie-going as an act of voyeurism and finding entertainment and tension and romance and drama and comedy in the viewing of other people's lives on a screen, which is essentially what Jimmy Stewart is doing as he looks at each of those windows out of the back of his window. He's watching all these little miniature movies. And Hitchcock brilliantly forces us over the course of that movie to question the ethics of doing that. And so it gets also at the ethics of filmmaking and being a responsible filmmaker. I always tell my students, I always quote the quote that they know that I've settled on that I use is from Spider-Man. Uncle Ben says, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is look at something like, Fox News to understand the power of images and sound, how they're shot, how they're edited together, and how they're disseminated, to understand how powerful moving images and sound can be, how powerful film can be. It doesn't have to be a feature film in the movies. Like anything that you're making for a screen, even the one in your pocket that we all carry around all day, is something that you can study to create in our program. We're not, when we say that we're a film program, we're not just thinking of like classic 35 millimeter celluloid. We're looking at all sort of moving image and sound media production. So,
and it's all changing so quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think, making films is powerful, and you can change the world for good or for bad, and people do both. So yeah, let's do it for good. So let's talk about the 80s, like these teen films in the 80s. You have a podcast,
I do,
which I love, called The Long Rewind.
Yep, The Long Rewind.
The Long Rewind. And you talk a lot about movies on VHS, which I'm about the same age as you. So that's what I grew up with too, going down to the video store, which could have been just in the corner of another store, like your dad's pharmacy.
Yeah.
And finding these movies, some box office hits and some random movies that you would find. But so tell me about the podcast. Why did you start that? And when did you start it, I guess?
We started a couple years ago. We do it every week. It comes out every Wednesday morning. It's my wife and I. My wife, Lisa, is a writer and a librarian and a researcher. And so she brings those skills to the podcast, and I bring my bloviating opinions and my endless gift for gab. And my love for 80s cinema. I mean, there's a healthy dose of nostalgia. I'm not going to pretend there isn't in the podcast. It's any Gen Xer who grew up in the 80s and 90s will love the show, just because we dig deep into the minutia of 80s cinema. But it's not just that. It's also there's sort of a biographical element. I'm interested in the idea of art as biography and telling not just my own story, but also our generation's story through its cinema. What kinds of movies were we passionate about? And then a little later, when we got old enough to make our own movies, what kinds of movies were we making? And I think you can find the story of the forgotten generation, Generation X, in those films. And so on a grand scale, over the course of the entire podcast, I hope that we're telling that story. The other reason I wanted to do it is that I listen to a lot of podcasts myself, and I could not find a single podcast like ours. And so I realized there's a window of opportunity there. There are a million Gen X movie podcasts and 80s movie podcasts, but they all have the same format, which is that they all sort of pick a movie every week and then they talk about that movie. And that's fine. And I listen to a lot of those, and a lot of those are great. But we didn't want to do that. We were looking at like trends and motifs and themes. We're also looking at the movie-going experience itself. So we talk a lot about why is it different to go to a video store and get a movie? Why is that profoundly a different experience in terms of how you interact with that movie and watch that movie than like streaming and clicking through Netflix and selecting something? They are wildly different experiences. I can name you 15 or 20 reasons right off the top of my head why they are such different experiences and mean different things. But we also look at like the birth of the multiplex. We'll look at the evolution of the rating system. So there's a healthy dose of like film history, 80s film history in our show too. And so I like to, I don't know, this is like pompous of me, but whatever. I like to, I say to Lisa, my wife and co-host, I'm like, I think our podcast it brings all the fun, hopefully, of your average movie podcast, and maybe like 15 to 20% more film scholarship than you would get in the average show.
Yeah. No, that's great. I've listened to a couple episodes already, and I really enjoyed it. It's great. It does bring back a lot of nostalgia for the 80s, which was a great time. I feel like the kids now really miss out because the 80s was a great time to grow up. They try to recreate it now with some of the trends, but there's nothing like living through it. That
It
first
is
time
wild how obsessed they are with our
Yeah,
culture, right?
I
Every
know.
movie that comes out and every TV show, all the biggest shows and films are recycled stuff from the 80s. Like it's
Hmm.
wild how it's almost like culture existed up to the 80s and then they decided we were done and they would just start recycling from there on out. 'Cause
It does seem that way. Yeah. Like you
yeah.
can't beat the 80s. The 80s were so great.
Yeah,
You
everything is
can't
a
do
reboot.
better.
Everything is
Yeah.
a remake. Yeah, or like sequels to 80s movies that you're like, really? They made another Beverly Hills Cop? It's been 30 years and they're making
Yeah.
another Naked Gun? Like it's wild that
I know. That is wild.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like what have they not unturned? I mean, when they made when the Fall Guy came out with the Ryan Gosling movie, I was like,
Hmm.
wow, they are really digging deep into kind of the more
Hmm.
obscure. We have gotten to this point. Like they have made everything from the 80s if they have to start making like the Fall Guy.
Yeah. Well, I have not seen, a reboot of Fast Times at Ridgemont High yet. So,
Thank God.
yeah,
Thank God.
exactly.
Stay away from it. It's a
Stay
sacred
away
cow.
from that. Yeah. Yeah. I actually was talking to a younger person the other day who had never seen Flashdance. And I was
Oh,
like, oh, you must watch Flashdance. Like you cannot go through life without that movie.
yeah.
Do you have a favorite 80s movie?
Oh yeah. It's Romancing the Stone.
Oh,
For
okay.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that movie. That was the
Yeah.
first I remember seeing that movie. I wasn't even in double digits. I was a little kid. I remember seeing that movie in a theater and I still vividly remember this. I could probably show you in that theater where I was sitting. That movie ended and the credits started rolling and
Hmm.
it was like I had this experience almost like a rubber band where I was snapped back into reality. And it was the first time I could ever remember being transported almost like out of my body I was so absorbed in the film that I
Hmm.
truly really forgot that I was a person sitting in a movie theater. And it was a real revelation to me even as a kid. I remember thinking, wow, I didn't know this word yet, but like this is escapist.
Hmm.
This is what this medium can do that no other
Hmm.
medium can do, that you can
Hmm.
really lose yourself in it, that you can walk and live as another person.
Hmm.
And so for some sentimental reasons, but also I just think it's an incredible movie. I think it has
Yeah.
one of the best performances of the 80s. Kathleen Turner's work in that
Yeah.
movie is incredible. I think it's one of the first movies to really do genre mashing really
Hmm.
successfully.
Hmm.
It's a romantic comedy, but it's
Hmm.
also an action adventure. It's got
Hmm.
elements of horror and like it's just got the whole package and it's all blended together so seamlessly. It's really wonderful. And of course,
Yeah.
I've since become friends with Kathleen, and she and I
Yeah.
did that
That's a
book
great
together. And
segue into
so
my next question was
yeah,
that
yeah.
you've written a book with Kathleen
For that
Turner. Yeah.
reason too, it'll always be a really special movie to me.
My memory of that movie is the swinging from the chandelier.
Oh, that's War of the Roses. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's the second one then?
Yeah.
Was that the second one?
In
Yeah.
Romancing the Stone, they swing on a vine over a canyon in the
Oh,
jungle.
okay.
You're thinking
Okay.
of War of the Roses, the movie where she and Michael Douglas go through the worst divorce in
Uh,
history, which
oh, I
they are
am.
remaking. It's coming out
Oh,
in
see,
like
there you go.
another month. Exactly. There's like Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman are
Oh
doing a
my
remake of that
gosh.
movie. Everything's being
Wow.
remade.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've only seen Romancing the Stone once, so that's not surprising that I confused it with War of the Roses, because I guess I probably put those two and Kathleen Turner's in both. So tell me about the book with Kathleen Turner. Like, how did that come about? And it's best-selling book.
Yeah.
Uh, her conversation on acting, film, television, and
Hmm.
theater, which a lot of
Yeah.
people probably don't realize she is an amazing stage actor. So,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Much more of a stage actor than she is a
Hmm.
film actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was my favorite actor as a kid. I found it so interesting how she was so especially in that era in the 80s, there was a lot of typecasting, and there were a lot of actors who, through no fault of their own, because it was what they were being offered, were making the sort of same movies over and over again. And she seemed to do something different every time she made a movie, which I always found really interesting. And I found out later, as I got to know her, that was by design, that she would never take a role that was anything like any other role she had played. And she told me, she's like, I could be, she didn't say this, I would say this, that she could be Glenn Close or Meryl Streep today if she wanted to, but but she didn't nurture that kind of career. And so as sort of more of a chameleon in her parts, it made it harder for the industry to figure out exactly what to do with her. But anyway, I'm digressing. The book is a feature length. Good Lord, it's a book length. I tell I'm a filmmaker, right? It's a book length discussion. It's not in standard prose. It's like the form of a conversation. Okay. So it's a great audiobook. It makes a great audiobook because it sounds like a conversation. Kathleen and I recorded the audiobook for Audible a few years ago. And so you can listen to it too if you want to hear a really sultry, sexy voice, and also hear Kathleen's voice too.
Yeah.
We do it. That's my standard joke for that.
Yeah.
You can tell I've told that before. Yeah, it was really fun to do. It's a book really at its heart about the relationship between the director and the actor, because I'm a director and she's an actor. And we really dug into that. And so I think anybody who's interested in the arts, in theater and film specifically, but just in the arts in general, will find it to be an interesting book. We also talk a lot about how the arts, how engaging in careers in the arts have affected our lives, like our personal lives. And what does it mean to be an actor or a filmmaker and live your life? And so it gets kind of deep, and it's kind of a lovely book in that way too, I think. So highly, it's available wherever books are sold. It's called Conversations with Kathleen Turner.
And you could probably get it from the library too. Yeah,
and you can get
audiobook
it from
the library. Yeah. Wow, that's exciting. And so you've also won an Emmy. I saw it noted that you won an Emmy, but I didn't see what that was for. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I actually won that when I was in grad school, and it was through their like academic division. They give student Emmys just like the Academy Awards give student Oscars. So it was for a project. It was very unexpected, but it was for a kind of a musical project that I did when I was in grad school. So it was really fun.
And so you've made a lot of films yourself. We talked about that. Of all the things that you do, so teaching, podcasting, screenwriting, filmmaking, do you have a favorite, or do you just like to sort of do a little bit of everything?
It varies. It depends on what I've been doing recently, right? Because that's the good thing about my career as I've set it up for myself, is that I'm allowed to kind of shape shift and move from one thing to the other. I've been on sabbatical for the last year, and it's sort of just ending. And so I'm excited to get back in a classroom and start teaching again, because I've been away from that for a year and I really miss it.
Wow.
But while on sabbatical, I've been doing a lot of screenwriting and editing. And those things have been really rewarding, and it's been great to have the opportunity to dig into those without the distraction of teaching. So I've used it well, I hope. And I guess when it comes to filmmaking, my favorite thing right now, I used to say editing, but really I've fallen in love ever since I did that book with Kathleen. I've fallen in love with the process of working with actors and collaborating with actors. And I just really love my actors now.
Yeah.
So love that.
Yeah, I love how it's just a collaborative process. Filmmaking it takes everyone, and everyone is so important in each piece of it. So I always like to ask this question. Do you have a big, beautiful dream? Like if there's something that you could accomplish that you haven't, because you've accomplished a lot, but if there's something else that you've always wanted to accomplish, if time or money was not an obstacle, um, what would it be? It could be film, it could be anything. What do you have some big thing you'd like to do?
I would love to write a novel,
Mm,
which is like it takes a lot of time. And as a as a professor of film and a filmmaker, I have to, I don't have to tell you that filmmaking is like an all-consuming passion.
Oh yeah,
It's not
consuming.
an
Yeah.
art that anyone goes
No,
into casually and says, I think I'll just do a little bit of filmmaking on the side. No one's ever
right.
said that, right?
No.
And so it's just so consuming, teaching and filmmaking, that the idea of like having time to write a book is it's just so outside my realm of possibility. But
Hmm.
it's something I hope to do
Hmm.
someday. And I've written spec scripts that will probably never get made because they would need these unbelievably big budgets, and they're movies that Hollywood just really isn't making anymore. And
Right.
so I have these scripts that could serve as models for a book, and so maybe that will be a good jumping off point for trying that someday. But one of my
Hmm.
earliest loves as a kid was creative writing.
Hmm.
I started writing stories in the third grade about alien invasions of my town and,
Hmm.
terrible stuff like that. And I've just always loved creative writing and done it just as a personal practice.
Hmm.
I have to write a little every day just to keep my
Hmm.
creative juices flowing.
Yeah, that's a good practice, I think, for writers. I started out wanting to write a novel. That was my intent when I started seriously writing. And I took one screenwriting class, and that was it. Because the story I want to write into a novel, I think would also make a great film.
Hmm.
And so I thought, oh, I'll take a screenwriting class. And then that was sort of the end of it for me. Like, okay, no, this is what I really want to do now. Um, but I still have that novel waiting for me to write. So it
Yeah,
does
yeah.
take time. My husband just finished writing a novel.
Oh, cool.
He writes mostly plays, but he just finished his first draft of a novel. So yeah, it is consuming. Like
Yeah,
film, it's
yeah.
consuming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm also just curious to see if I can do it. I mean, as a
yeah,
screenwriter, I think in terms of visuals and
right.
sound and
Hmm.
plot structure and
Hmm.
narrative momentum, and those things don't necessarily translate to writing a great novel. And
Hmm.
so, just as a challenge, as a process, even if it turns out bad, and I never show it to anybody, I would like to do it just to kind of approach it as almost an experiment to see whether I can do it
Hmm.
and what I can learn from it, and maybe what I can take back
Hmm.
to my filmmaking practice from
Hmm.
having tried it.
Yeah, I think the trend, one of the trends now is, IP. So writing that novel and then adapting it into a film. But I think it's more difficult to go the other direction to adapt from a screenplay into a novel because
Yeah.
it doesn't translate as much.
Yeah.
It's a whole different mindset. But I think you can do it. I think you'll be able to do it. It sounds like you've been writing long enough that you'll be able to make that happen. Um, do you have any advice? You probably have tons of advice. I mean, you've given us tons of advice, but like one nugget of advice that you always give that maybe you learned along the way that you found really helpful that we could leave people with.
In terms of nurturing a career in this industry.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Um, it's not a one man band kind of, it is unlike most artistic endeavors in that there aren't many ways to do it by yourself. And so
Hmm.
it's really about relationships in part. And as somebody who is, uh, not an extroverted person, I found that aspect of filmmaking to be somewhat challenging. And so that's a skill I think that a lot of students should work on, and it's a hard thing to teach. How to engage with the sort of social aspect of filmmaking, or how to think about building a network, or building a core group of collaborators that you trust. So that's tough. On a small level, thank you notes. Always send a thank you note to everybody, to anyone who hires you, anyone that you really enjoy working with. And I'm a big believer in analog thank you notes, which my students, I always ask in my classes, like, have any of them ever sent a thank you note on paper? And they never, none of them ever have.
Really? Wow.
And I'm just like, you don't know what it means, like, just to get that in the mail. Like somebody took the time and took 44 cents, to send you a note to say, hey, it was cool to meet you on this film. I'm so excited to work with you. I can't wait to see how this project turns out, and I hope we get to work together again. When I get thank you notes from students in my mailbox at school, those are the students I remember.
Right.
And those are the students that I'm just convinced are going to make it in this industry. So that's a tiny, concrete, easy thing that anyone can do. Just show some gratitude to the people that you're working with, even if you don't mean it. Show them some gratitude. It'll go a long way. You'll be remembered for that. You'll stand out from the sea of other young people that are trying to get a foothold in the industry.
Right. And I think, that's really important, the networking and just the small things that you can do to build those relationships, because a lot of people think that networking is just going out there and meeting people that can do something for me. Yeah. That's not networking. Networking is going out and finding people who you can do something for. And I think once people realize that, networking is a lot easier. Find out about people. What do they like to do? Who are they? And build those relationships. Those go a long way in filmmaking, for sure. All right. Is there anything else you want to tell us or talk about that we haven't talked about today?
I don't think so. I'll just say that if there are any young people out there who are watching this and are interested in possibly pursuing a career in this industry, or further deeper study, and are interested in the program at Portland State, to contact us. Study film at pdx.edu, or go to our website, the Portland State School of Film, and learn about all of the amazing things that we have to offer. Study abroad programs. We have a program in New York City. We have internships with all of the big media players in Portland. We have an amazing portfolio show. We have courses that prepare you to work in the film industry, teach you how to do the resume, how to build a reel, how to make a website, how to network. We have a new partnership with Leica that provides scholarships to our students and fellowships to our faculty. We built a new stop motion animation studio. So we are turning out the next generation of stop motion animators. We have just so many, too many things to count and to tell you about in the time we have here. But there's a lot going on down at PSU Film. And so I just encourage anybody who's interested in it to contact us and come learn about what we're doing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so we'll put links to that in the show notes. So
Cool.
make it easy for people to connect. And then where can we follow you online? So your podcast, I'll put a link to that. And then the book with Kathleen Turner. You have a website. And then where can we find you online? Are you on Instagram or LinkedIn or any of those?
I'm not great at social media. I do have, I have a Facebook page. I have, but really my website is the best place to contact me and to also to learn about, when my films are coming out or when they're airing on TV or that kind of thing. I post that stuff there.
Yeah.
So it's just my name, dustinmorrow.com.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll link that in the show notes too. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Dustin. I really, really appreciate it. Great information. And thanks for all the work you're doing in Portland with the filmmakers.
And thank you, Dawn. Thanks for, creating this podcast and helping to shine a light on independent filmmaking in Portland. I agree with you. I mean, Movie Maker magazine has consistently named us as one of the 10 best cities in the country for independent filmmakers. And so, we've obviously, there's a lot going on here, and it's cool to have this podcast as a resource to sort of spreading some of the information about what people are doing. And because it's even though it's a vibrant community, it's not a huge community, and so it's a great way for us all to meet each other too and learn about what each other are working on, that kind of thing. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to continue the conversation with Dustin Morrow, reach out to him through Portland State Film. If you're interested in pursuing a degree in film and want to hear about the opportunities offered at Portland State, click on the links provided. Be sure to listen to Dustin's podcast, The Long Rewind. You'll find those links and more in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a 5-star review and share it on your social media. It helps us connect with more indie film lovers. Want to support the podcast by becoming a guest or a sponsor? Reach out at OregonIndieFilm@gmail.com.